Adam Smith, who are you?
I'm an economist, and I wrote 2 books. I wrote The Wealth of Nations and The Theory of Moral Sentiments. And my works have influenced economics, like even today, and they're the foundations of the classical field.
How did your book, The Wealth of Nations, impact the world?
It focused on why certain nations are more wealthy than others, and it basically explained how the wealth of the nation isn't dictated by how much gold or silver they have, but it's actually dictated by the size of their economy.
What is your view on human morality and sympathy?
So I wrote a book on it. It's called The Theory of Moral Sentiments, and it focuses on how as people work to better themselves, so self-improvement, they indirectly help other people to better themselves. So in the Industrial Revolution, as companies try to work towards self-interest, they created new and innovative products that help raise the standard of living by having new innovations that help people.
And how did you view the Industrial Revolution?
I think it was a good thing because it led to better products that raise the standard of living, and it boosted the economy by creating more jobs and more money.
Okay, no further questions.
All right, Mr. Smith, that's your name. In your statement, you said there is an increase in wages, but how much did the wages actually increase by?
I'm not sure how much they increased by, but my theory was that as jobs became more specialized, wages would increase because trades would be harder to learn, and then if they were harder to learn, there'd be less people doing it, and they'd be forced to be paid more.
You also said that trades became more difficult to learn. Can you expand on that?
Well, when you, as time passed on, like if you were educated, you actually had to have an education. So having an education was more difficult than not having an education, and you were paid more for having an education.
So monopolies, price fixing, and an increased wealth gap, where about 1% of the population controls 80% of the wealth. Should we thank you for these things?
No, because it's not me who really did any of this, but the Industrial Revolution did help because it did help bring people out of poverty in the long run. So.
No further questions. Thank you.
Okay, can I just ask where you get that last question? Where did you get that from? Oh, yeah, okay. I'm assuming James is up next.
Yeah.
James
James
Watts,
Watts.
okay. James, welcome. Welcome, lots of info in here about you. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yeah.
Hello.
Who are you and how did you impact the Industrial Revolution?
I am James Watt, and I impacted the Industrial Revolution by improving the steam engine, and I was known to spark the Industrial Revolution.
How was the change of society beneficial to the Industrial Revolution?
It was good because it allowed for the introduction of new jobs, and it created a fast-paced society, which was like the improvement of transportation.
How were you able to reduce the amount of energy within the steam engine?
I improved the steam engine to allow to have 80% less fuel because air pressure creates steam instead of heat, and is prevented enormous loss of the steam.
How was your partnership with Matthew Bolton successful in the Industrial Revolution?
It was successful because it was a mix of my engineering skills with his factory and commercial skills, and we were able to export technology all over the world to help out in other factories.
What other inventions did you create throughout the Industrial Revolution?
I created the rotary engine, which was crucial because it enabled engines to roll on wheels rather than the pumping up-down motion. And I also created the copy machine, the double action machine, and the steam pressure indicator, which indicated how much steam.
No further questions.
Hello.
Hi.
Okay, so you are James Watt, right? So you created or you introduced the steam engine?
I did not create it, I improved it. It was already around, but I just kind of improved it to make sure it didn't, it had a better effect and it worked better than the earlier inventions.
And in your witness statement, you say you proposed the idea that water was made out of hydrogen and combined with oxygen. Well, on the topic of water, water mills provided clean energy as well, so why couldn't that be a source of energy in burning coal was used?
I mean, it could, but I created the steam engine, the one I created had less fuel than the earlier one, so it wasn't burning as much coal. It was lowering the pollution.
So pollution was created and water could have been used?
It could have, but it could be used, but my improvement, if you were to use a steam engine, reduce the amount of pollution being exported.
Okay. I didn't know what to
Thank
say.
you. Thank you, Jane.
Richard,
Oh.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
okay, Richard, who are you and how did you impact the Industrial Revolution?
I'm considered the father of modern industrial factory systems, and my inventions were catalysts for the Industrial Revolution. I started working off as an apprentice, and after my wife passed away, I became an entrepreneur. And then as I got married again, my second wife brought more income to the home, so that gave me a chance to expand our barber business. And I acquired some secret methods for like making wigs, and I traveled around and started purchasing money for hair. And later on, that helped me manufacture wigs. But sooner or later, like it started declining, and that made me start going, like I turned into mechanical inventions.
How did your work become more efficient? How did work, not your work, sorry.
My work was efficient for laborers, like I helped other people because I built houses near my factories that helped like, so people who were like not able to like afford stuff, I made houses next to like my factory system so my laborers could like, it would be easier for them to go to work. And I built schools for the children who were not working at the hours so they could go to school.
In this time, what source of power was used besides manpower?
My friend John Smalley, we set up a small horse during factory because we were needing more capital to expand, and I later partnered up with Jedi Strutt and Samuel Mead, and they were wealthy forestry manufacturers, and we built the world's first water mill tower. And my invention went far to Scotland because it was such a success, and I influenced many others to copy me.
In your opinion, what are benefits from the Industrial Revolution?
I would say the fact that like, because I helped like build factories, and that helped many others like get jobs, and the fact that like factories were so like efficient and helpful that like helped other people like produce like a lot more production.
On the subject of factories, what was work like before your invention?
I would say much harder because you needed a lot more laborers, and I feel like that was hard for them. So like after like factories came along, it was much easier for like other people like to start building stuff, and like you could like, and I feel it was easier for some of the laborers to like get start doing more work.
No further questions.
Just really quickly, she mentioned this, but I feel like it might have gotten lost in there. He was the first person to open a factory. He mentioned that when he was kind of mentioning about having the factories by the houses and the schooling. So that's an important piece of information for you to know.
Do you have to write
No.
yourself?
Just put me, and your spot, just write me. You don't have to write notes because you already wrote your witness statement.
Okay, so in your witness statement, you said you wanted big families so the women and children would come and work in the factory while the men worked in the looms in the house. So you thought it was okay to employ children?
Yes. And no at the same time, because I thought it would give an opportunity for, I guess, to bring more income to the family so the children could come work. But also, I didn't just use them for like labor issues. I did build them schools so they could also get educated at the same time.
Okay, so would you agree that the Industrial Revolution brought families together?
Yes.
Well, in the textbook, it said it became less common for family members to work together since they were working 14-hour days and they really lived separate lives. They really didn't see their children or the family members.
But also, like, even though they were working like long hours, I do agree, but they also got the chance to like still see each other, and like they got to some families like work together too, so I feel like, you know.
And then you say that he built houses for workers in his factory, schools and chapels. And do you know around what time he started integrating schooling into factory work?
Around, I would say, around the 17, somewhere around the 1700s.
It wasn't until 1881 education was required for children's ages 5 to 10.
I do have to just make one clarifying point. She is right. I do need to add to that though, that Richard Arkwright was an exception in starting to introduce education to workers early on. It did not become a norm until almost the 1900s to have it be, the word you used was required.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just want to clarify that.
Okay, no further questions.
Can we make an objection, or is that not allowed?
Was your objection about that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And also, now in modern day, people still don't work with their families.
Oh, so I would, okay, so great point. I would add stuff like that to your closing.
Okay.
Make a little note and add it into your closing.
Okay.
Same goes with you guys. Anything that you feel like you couldn't get in or you realize later, make a note to add it into your closing somewhere.
Thank you.
No further questions?
No, that's it.
Okay, good job. You guys are doing a good job.
Henry Bessemer.
Everyone, that applies to everyone. Witnesses. Henry! We got a couple Henrys, so we're doing Henry Bessemer.
Are we not doing economists?
You're next.
Economist is next, I guess.
Consumer is next.
Consumer is next, sorry.
And no Samuel
Oh,
Smiles?
yes, I'm sorry, he's going by the order. No Sam, no economists, right? Yeah, because we just didn't, we don't have enough people in this class. So we're skipping economist. And,
Is there anyone else we're skipping?
yes, so we're skipping Sam and we're skipping, do we have a union worker? Yes, we have a union worker. Yeah, okay, so that's it. All right, Henry has lots to tell you, so.
All right. Who are you and how did you impact the Industrial Revolution?
Okay, I'm Hennig Bessemer, and I'm an inventor during the Industrial Revolution. I impacted the Industrial Revolution by creating the Bessemer process, which was a cheaper and easier way to produce high qualities.
So what was the Bessemer process, like steps?
Okay, the Bessemer process was an industrial process for the manufacture of steel from molten pig iron. In the process, air is continuously forced through steel while it is contained in the crucible, which burned the carbon present in the steel and removed many of the impurities that would impair the quality and strength of the metal. And the machines used to activate this process ran continuously, which produced larger quantities of steel.
Was steel used in anything that helped people during the Industrial Revolution?
Yeah, steel created hardware items such as like hammers and different tools that also helped create more buildings, which gave people more jobs, and it also helped with the creation of the assembly lines, which provided jobs for labor.
Did steel production create more jobs?
Yes.
And can you expand on that, please?
It created more jobs because it was used in assembly lines, which gave in different forms of work and the tools that was used. So it allowed people in factories. It gave more. It gave more work for people in the factories, which allowed more jobs to be created.
And the last question is, in your opinion, did cheap steel bring any drawbacks?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Were you aware that children were involved in iron ore mining?
Yes.
Do you care that their health is in danger?
I do care, but I also care about the fact that there was not a lot of money given to families during this time, so it was very important for kids in this era to help provide money to them.
So the workers.
Consumer.
Okay. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Consumer.
Okay, consumer, who are you and how did you impact the industrial revolution?
Well, I'm a middle class manager at a factory. I got it. I became a manager through hard work, by getting an education and moving up the chain hierarchy until I became a manager. Me and my family, we live in a small apartment near the factory, and we live maybe not rich lives, but we are scrapping for any money.
How were products changed by the industrial revolution?
Well, products, because of the new inventions like or the innovation of making the steam engine better, or the assembly line, it made products be made quicker and more cheaply, which allowed people to buy these products, which allowed for a larger and larger middle class. While before the Industrial Revolution, you had only the nobles who could afford rich products, while the peasantry and the such like couldn't afford much.
How has education changed during and by the Industrial Revolution?
Well, before, education was only for the aristocrats, where only the people who could afford it. But because of the Industrial Revolution, people saw that how children were working all this time, and they thought to change it so they could have better lives. So they started focusing more on education, making education mandatory, and the such like, so they could have better lives in the future.
How has healthcare changed during the Industrial Revolution?
Well, in the beginning, it was pretty bad with the pollution and such like, but later on in the Industrial Revolution, many new breakthroughs in medical science happened, like the invention of the vaccine, sanitation, and the such like, and we also Louis Pasteur found out about germs and how they work and such like. So he was using the cells, they were able to make more or cures based on it. Yes.
Okay. How did agriculture increase during the Industrial Revolution?
Well, thanks to again new inventions, such like the seed drill, thanks to more use of iron plows, and also new methods like selective breeding or the Enclosure Act, which allowed for bigger farms. This allowed for a humongous increase in agriculture, which while before there was barely any innovation in agriculture, but now this humongous increase allowed for large populations to not have to work on the farm, but instead like go to the cities and increase production in factories.
No further questions.
We don't have your witness statement.
I don't have one either.
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't give anybody a witness statement. Okay. Yeah.
I have the answers to his questions. You can use all the steps if you want.
That's, I think, are you good? Yeah, they got like a question or two.
Okay, so the price of many goods is lower, but the cost of producing them is high. So that meant low wages for workers and low quality products. Do you believe that the lowest cost wasn't a good thing?
Well, like I said, the low cost was good because it allowed people to who before weren't able to buy it now buy it. Like before, or let's say you had some type of fancy silverware or such like. Before, only the aristocrats could buy it, but now a growing number of middle-class people could buy it because it was on a cheaper price.
At the cost of a low quality?
Well, low quality. Well, was it extreme? If it wasn't such an extremely low quality where it was unusable. It was a quality where the middle class could enjoy some of the fineries of what the aristocrats. The aristocrats still could buy expensive items, but now people with less money still could maybe sample what the rich and powerful could have at a cost that they could enjoy.
No.
Thank
All
you.
right, we'd like to call up Thomas Edison. Who are you and how did you impact the Industrial Revolution?
I'm Thomas Edison, and I impacted the Industrial Revolution in a way where it left not just a temporary impact, but also a long-term effect. I was the driving force behind innovations such as the electric light bulb, the world's first industrial research laboratory, and the phonograph.
How did your light bulbs affect factories in your time?
The electric light bulb brought networks of wires into homes and offices, making it relatively easy to add appliances and other machines.
How did your inventions, like the phonograph, help create a positive impact on people?
The phonograph revolutionized the art of music. Performances were recorded and people could listen to them at their leisure. It also made music and communication more public.
Despite your partial deafness, why didn't you give up on your dream of being part of such innovations?
I knew that in the end, it would not only help me, but also the society that I lived in. There were no backsides to creating easier and more sufficient lives for others. I took my deafness as an advantage because it helped me concentrate more, and it was never an obstacle of doing my work in it.
What is your perspective on the Industrial Revolution?
I believe that the Industrial Revolution brought positive impacts economically, socially, and politically. Apart from my innovations, there were so many other changes that helped create a better style of living. Starting with the standard of living growing higher as more goods were produced to women entering the workforce, showing equality in both genders, to aristocrats being replaced by capitalists as the leaders of governments.
Thank you. No further questions.
So in your witness statement, you say that factories no longer have to worry about hazardous atmospheres because you invented the light bulb. So were you not aware of the working conditions?
I was aware of the working conditions, but that has no part in what I had to do, which was make the light bulb.
Workers were forced to they were forced to work with dangerous glass, with moldy glass and metal, and that's not hazardous?
Like I said before, that had nothing to do with what I had to create, which is the electric light bulb.
Yeah, but that's involved in the production of making it.
So would you rather have people not have lights and work in those hazardous conditions and still have the light bulb?
She can't answer questions, but I think you're asking about the making of
Yeah.
light bulbs, right? The actual act
Yeah.
of making the light bulb, and that in and of itself being a dangerous. She's not talking about other factories. Does that make sense?
So like she's saying how it was like
Dangerous
to me?
She's asking about the dangers of making light bulbs,
For your
To the
employees.
people that were
making your invention.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
so she's not talking about in general
Yeah.
factories.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
okay. So ask the question again.
So were you not aware of the other working conditions that workers faced creating your invention?
Yes, I was aware of them, but like I said in my in the questions that I answered, that it brought a long-term effect. I don't think we would be sitting here like in our electric light bulb if it wasn't for me and my workers.
And then you also said that you focused on inventing a safe and inexpensive electric light, but the sun is free and fire creates light using renewable resources, so why did you
But the
feel the
sun
need to
can't
make
come
that?
into everything. Like I don't see windows here.
So her question is, aren't there other options of
Yeah,
getting?
but you can't do more than the light bulb. Like the sun isn't gonna help you, or the fire isn't gonna help you every time. It's more like efficient to have light bulbs.
Okay, no.
Okay, you're doing good, Shariah. I feel like every time she starts up, she's like, no further questions. You're doing good. You're doing awesome. Everybody's doing great. So keep it up. You are Henry Ford, everyone.
Okay, Henry Ford, who are you?
I work as an engineer for the Edison Illuminating Company. After becoming aware of my own potential, I put a start on my own company, the Ford Motor Vehicle.
Okay, how did you influence the Industrial Revolution?
After many years, I was finally able to create the Model T automobile. It is seen as a revolutionary vehicle which puts society on its toes.
What was your life like before the Industrial Revolution?
I spent most of my days in a one-room school and doing family chores. When I turned 16, I left home for my first job in Detroit working as a mechanic.
Did the creation of the assembly line help anything other than the automobile industry?
The assembly line did indeed help the automobile industry, and it changed it forever. But its idea and its invention took other forms of industry, changing not only the automobile production, but the industry as a whole.
Did your meager upbringing inspire you to do something revolutionary to change your life?
I was determined to become an engineer. Through hard work and perseverance, I was able to begin my own company, bringing about new revolutionary mass production methods, which changed more than just me.
No further questions.
So can you please elaborate on the assembly line?
Well, it was a larger production plant, the use of interchangeable parts, and the most important of my revelations were the moving assembly line.
How did your workers feel about this process?
Well, it was long, but it was worth it.
So the repetition and getting little breaks were I'm sorry. The repetition and the only 15-minute breaks where they weren't even allowed to talk, sit down, or even smile were necessary.
Well, they weren't not necessary. It's just I feel like they were more able to like focus on their job and like not worry about like other things.
Or days.
Well, it was a certain time where like if they did good, they got paid more.
Yeah. So they had to work twice as much, but they also had their privacy invaded because they had to, in order to receive their $5, they had to submit to investigations for their personal life.
So are you asking her a question?
Yeah, like.
So formulate that into a question. So we've heard the evidence.
Okay, would you
Now
agree
what's-
that that it was an invasion of privacy?
Somewhat. I mean, it wasn't really an invasion of privacy. It was kind of just like if you want this, then stuff has to be like further, like, I don't know how to say it.
Investigate.
Yeah.
So making sure that their houses were clean and that they went to church was necessary?
Well, yeah. I mean, $5 is a lot.
Okay. No further questions.
Okay, good job. Okay, I think, do we just have one witness before, okay?
All right, can we get our union worker up here?
Here comes Amy, our union worker. What is she gonna say? She's here to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Okay, union worker, not organizer.
Union worker. Who are you?
So I'm a union worker from Great Britain. I joined the trade union because I wanted to speak against the unfair treatment of the working class. And thanks to the tireless efforts of fellow union workers, we've been able to improve the standards of living for even the lowest of social classes.
For clarification purposes, what is the difference between a paid worker and a slave?
So a paid worker is paid and they're able to provide for their family and afford for like new products, while the slaves have no choice and they have no way to like have a family and provide for them on their own.
What were the conditions like after the revolution?
After the revolution, people had more rights, a new minimum wage was set, child labor became limited, new benefits like insurance came into being, and there were regulated work hours. Also, the population increased because of the productivity of the Industrial Revolution, so not as many people were malnourished, and also there were new medical advances which helped increase the population as well.
Explain government policies that changed.
Some of the government policies that changed were that children were required to get an education, and this was passed by British Parliament in 1808. And then slavery was abolished in part because of the Industrial Revolution, because it was more beneficial to have paid workers than to have slaves. And then we trade union members were able to pressure the government into setting a minimum wage law, regulating work hours and conditions, and limiting child labor.
Why did the Industrial Revolution have a positive impact on humanity?
Like I said before, it increased the standard of living even for the poor. More food was available, more medicine was available, people were paid more, and there were more restriction on child labor.
No further questions?
Hello, union worker. In your witness statement, you said the Industrial Revolution greatly increased the standard of living. How can you explain that construction was only designed to fit as many people as possible, and with the increased number of people living in one home, which is usually one bedroom, that there was no place to put like waste, so they filled it in the streets?
Well, I mean, it increased standard of living because since there was more productivity, more food was like produced, and that allowed better diets for people, so they lived longer.
What would you do if the employers denied your request for better conditions?
We would hold strikes until they listened to what we had to say.
Would you revolt against any like their machinery?
No.
No further questions.
Defendant.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Okay, who are you and how did you benefit humans?
I'm the Industrial Revolution, and I benefited humans because I was an era of innovation, and it helped better people's lives through various methods, including a new and improved inventions, population growth and change, as well as the availability of new jobs and better wages for workers.
Explain the assembly line.
The assembly line was a method of building or manufacturing that was used during this time to help provide more jobs and allow for workers to specialize at a certain task and create a better wage.
What happened to the population during this time?
During this time, the population grew rapidly from new medicine, foods, and a decrease in diseases, war-related problems, and famine. And a population shift occurred from rural to urban population.
What happened to the number and quality of jobs at this time?
During this time, because of assembly lines and factories, the number of jobs went up because they need more workers to help work in factories, work the assembly lines, and included the selling and transportation of the new products being made.
What were social relations like during this time?
During this time, a new middle class arose, and there was less. A middle class arose, and
What were social relations like during this time?
well, there was still the poor class and the aristocrats. There was a new growing middle class. More wealth was distributed evenly, and there was less discontent between the groups because they were starting to even out and become equal.
No further questions.
In your witness statement, you said that conditions that people worked in were less than perfect, but it really doesn't compare to the other positives that brought along by it. but can you explain that workers were affected by physical deformities?
Like everything that has a good and bad. I was one thing that in the long run ended up with good. And there may have been some bad things, but looking at it, there's other positives like new ideas and movements like capitalism, socialism, and new reforms to help prevent that and stop that from going on. So it wasn't continuously going on. That was for a small period of time that was quickly fixed.
You also said it's clear that the Industrial Revolution was beneficial to the human race. So are you saying that diseases such as cholera, tuberculosis, and smallpox were beneficial to the human race?
They were not beneficial, but there was new vaccines created during this time to help prevent them and stop them from hurting the human society.
You also said that there was an increase in population and a shift from rural to urban living. But as cities became overly populated, these diseases spread rapidly and killed many, but it also forced poor upkeep, like crime rates increasing.
Well, every city has its problems, like crime, so you can't completely get rid of it. And then the diseases, there's a lot of people, yes, but there's new buildings being built trying to create better conditions for those people. And those people had money to improve their situations.
Okay, we have our surprise evidence.
Okay.
Can we just bring it up to her?
Yep.
Okay. I don't know if we can show.
Yeah, you can
Okay.
kind of explain and then tell us, and then we can pass it around.
Okay, so these are the charts and the data that represent the pollution and chemicals that increased during this time. So here you have the carbon dioxide, the start of industrial revolution, and as even till today, it's still increasing. And this is not only where it started in England, but also in Hawaii and in Russia. And then this is the same thing, just showing how much carbon dioxide actually increased from this time.
I'm gonna pass this to.
Oh, this is also, it's pretty much the same graph, but it's not just disease, but it's also like coal, water, and how like fossil fuels went, there's an increased amount of them, and then renewable sources went down, and then they started using more non-renewable sources of energy.
Can we just pass this around?
Yes, our jurors need to see this. This is yesterday's evidence. Do you need the defendant to respond to the evidence in any way?
What'd you say?
Do you need the defendant to respond to the evidence in any way?
If you want, yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you say that CO2 emissions increased during this time. That may be true, but before then, we were using our primary source of oxygen, wood, as fuel, building materials, and everything else. So by stopping that and transferring to CO2, we are allowing more trees to grow, which is taking away the carbon dioxide being produced. Therefore, we're not taking away our oxygen. We may be creating some, but the trees that we are not using are getting rid of the CO2 emissions.
Yeah, but now you're adding pollution with carbon dioxide now.
Well, there's always been a little bit of CO2. Even when you burn a fire, there was emissions.
But now there's like a major increase in it.
Yeah, but we're not using the trees, which can take away the CO2 emissions.
No further questions.
Okay. So with that, we have 5 minutes. So we'll do 2 minutes. Jurors, I'm gonna need to speak with you briefly. Witnesses, while you're preparing, making sure you're ready for your closing, we're gonna go prosecution, then defense. You can stay up here. Can you guys finalize your information before you leave class? Put your notes. All right. Let's give our attention to our attorney, prosecution. Girls.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the Industrial Revolution had an overall negative impact on humanity. The Industrial Revolution made millions miserable, and it only made the rich more wealthy and the poor more unfortunate. Working conditions were atrocious, and even life outside the factory was dreadful. Families were forced to live with 10 to 12 people in one home, and even illness and diseases spread rather quickly. Due to the size of the houses, there was no place to put waste, so the streets were filled with disease, pollution, trash, etc. The workhouses were even the worst place to work during this time for multiple reasons. The pay was $8 to $10 a week, and that would be about 10 cents an hour. It's not much to live on. Workers usually spend 12 to 16 hours working every day with only a 1 to 2 hour break and not much sleep. Also, due to the increase of industrial factories, The amount of carbon dioxide rose by millions because of daily coal burning. The Industrial Revolution was a form of capitalism because it created two different classes of people, the workers and the exploiters. The exploiters constantly took advantage of the poor workers, and this eventually led to worker riots and revolts. But when the workers decided to form a union, the industry never listened to them, and they even fired the employees for protesting. Factory workers weren't the only workers being mistreated. The mill girls were treated in an inhumane manner. They had to endure harsh punishments such as being pinched, beat, pushed, and even seen as slaves from their employers. These girls had to work 73 hours a week and were only forced to work in a room with about 80 other innocent girls. During this time, 25,000 to 35,000 people died and about 1 million were injured at their jobs. Not only that, but over 50% of child workers were involved in work that put their lives in danger. And there was no workers' compensation, so if you were to get injured at work, well, that was tough luck, and that wasn't fair to anybody. Also in the cities, there was unacceptable upkeep. Crime rates were high, construction was only designed to fit as many people as possible, and reasonable living conditions weren't considered at all. The average global temperature was also rising as well due to the invention of the automobile and extensive use of non-renewable resources, and industry disrupted the prior way of life beforehand. Industry also promoted a more indoor lifestyle, and studies have shown that being in an outdoor environment can decrease stress and increase immune systems, but the problem was that it was also harmful to be outdoor as indoor. Also, the Industrial Revolution caused the world to become mass consumers, and this only created awful habits. So, the Industrial Revolution had an overall impact on humanity after it began in England in the mid-1700s due to health hazards, harsh punishments, inhumane working conditions, and an unfair economic system.
Thank
Now
you.
we have 1 minute to get this.
No, well, okay.
Good afternoon, my name is Carly Bory, and this is my partner Sarah Abraham, and again, we are the defense lawyers for this case. In this case that the prosecution has presented to you today and yesterday, there is insufficient evidence to convict. The defendant stands here wrongly accused of having an overall negative impact on humanity after it began in England in the mid-1700s. We ask for a verdict of not guilty. The prosecution has provided witnesses asking for your pity, including a child who chose manual labor but does not like hard work. They have shown you someone who has destroyed the machines that supplied an occupation for someone else in a selfless act to make a statement. The prosecution has given witness to a man who did not like the conditions in his workplace but continued to work without doing anything to make a difference. They showed you a girl who did not appreciate the food, housing, pay, or medical care provided to her. They showed you an organizer who led her people to fight for better wages but not to find a new job that already had the wages they argued for. We have seen two economists and scientists who conducted research and spread the word about negativity but never took action. They continued to work for pay and spend their money like any other person would have killed to do. Should I just keep going?
Go ahead, yeah.
Okay. Their last witness was an environmentalist who still buys products built from these harsh tree-killing factories. While analyzing our witnesses, they said that families were separate throughout the day, when how is that different now? They said workers were forced to work 14 to 16 hours a day, but who was forcing them? They said the products for middle class were low quality, but where is the proof? The conditions were hard for light bulbs, building light bulbs, but at least they had lights to see what they never did before. The sun gives light, but at night, through walls. They insulted inventors for how the factories were run, but they had no part in the decisions of how they were run, only what they were making. Surprise!
You can keep going. Witnesses, if you need to go, I'll write jurors' passes. You can keep going.
The surprise evidence shown was only showing information that was not a surprise and had already been discussed now, and how when pollution increased, laws and agencies were created like the EPA to eventually prevent pollution and create more health hazard or health safety. They say that the money was not enough and may seem like little to us now, but times were different and products were worth less. What's the prosecution prove to you? It seems to me that they proved that there were many people in this time unwilling to perform work for pay. They would rather have worked in the pre-industrial revolution conditions. The defense has thoroughly shown you the countless improvements to the society, economy, and quality of life in this time. This defendant does not even have to prove he is innocent. Rather, it is the lack of substantial evidence from the prosecuting attorneys that can prove the defendant is not guilty. We would ask you to render the only verdict that is fair, not guilty.
Okay,